LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. Released in April 2022, it covers all three Star Wars trilogies in the classic LEGO format we've all come to love over the years, now with a new twist. It's kind of like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We all learned about it in history class, but not all of us truly understand it. This game was first revealed at E3 2019, and finally released nearly 3 years later after multiple delays. Naturally, the long wait caused many to hype up the game, and while it got mainly positive reviews, they weren't nearly as positive as many would have expected. Let's jump back to 2007 for a moment. LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga is out and quickly deemed to be the definitive LEGO Star Wars game. All 6 movies, plus bonus content not seen in the earlier games, it truly covers the complete saga. I said the complete saga. Damn it. At the time, though, the first 6 movies were the complete saga. The franchise was still in the hands of George Lucas, and he had no plans of making any more Star Wars movies. But just a few years later, Lucasfilm was sold to Disney, and they almost immediately announced plans for new movies. This would eventually become the sequel trilogy, which was released from 2015 to 2019. Before the new trilogy even ended, people were already imagining a new LEGO game. What if there was a new game like the Complete Saga, but with the sequel trilogy covered as well? It didn't take long for TT Games to respond, because in 2016, they released one ninth of that. Okay, so after The Force Awakens released, a LEGO game based on just that movie came out half a year later. Regardless of its reception, making a LEGO game covering just one movie was very strange to a lot of people, especially since it was part of a trilogy that was still ongoing. Why not just wait until the trilogy ends and then make a game from that? We may never truly know, but not too long after that game was released, TT Games would begin development on what we were all hoping for. One of the most significant parts of the Skywalker Saga's development was the use of a brand new game engine created specifically for this game, called Entity. This decision was made by management and was reportedly controversial among the developers. Entity was significantly slower than the engines the developers had previously used, and sometimes had issues saving properly, which could lead to lost work. It was later revealed that TT Games abandoned Entity after the development of this game, and are using Unreal Engine for their future projects. Another one of the big issues the developer faced was the fact that 2 of the films hadn't even been released when development started. Lucasfilm only gave them access to specific scenes of those movies, meaning they would have to adapt those movies with incomplete parts and then squeeze the remaining parts in once they got full access to the movie. This would not be the first time this happened though, since LEGO Star Wars the video game released before Revenge of the Sith came out. There is a very select number of people who got spoiled on that movie from a LEGO video game, and I'd very much like to meet those people. On top of that, the working conditions were reportedly just as bad as the engine, with employees being physically and emotionally drained due to crunch culture. This game was slated to be the biggest LEGO game yet, but as development went on, some could argue it was becoming too ambitious. But finally, after about a year and a half of development, the game was revealed for the first time at E3 2019. A trailer showed scenes from all 3 trilogies, and then a release date of 2020. Yeah, because of all the stuff I talked about before, and possibly a certain worldwide issue, a 2020 release was definitely not happening. From here to January 2022 was a period that I remember quite fondly. Nearly every day, I'd go on YouTube hoping that someone had news about the Skywalker Saga's release, or just any new information about the game in general. A decent amount of this time was during the pandemic, so I was generally stuck at home with nothing better to do. I'd find out about characters, planets, gameplay changes, plus the occasional leak and trailer announcement. All of these videos led me to believe that this game was gonna be incredible. It wasn't until January of 2022 that we finally got the release trailer, showing the release date and mumble mode, what the fuck? For context, LEGO games before LEGO Batman 2 didn't have dialogue, instead having characters use mumbles and grunts to tell a story. This was probably done due to a lack of budget for voice acting, but a lot of people, including myself, have a lot of nostalgia for this style of LEGO games. And it's not like this style is inherently worse. It has a lot of potential for visual humor that wouldn't make as much sense if they did have voice acting. So it seems like after switching to fully voiced games, TT Games finally took notice of the potential in the grunts of yesteryear. But when they showed a clip of Mumble Mode in action during the trailer, something felt off. Regardless, it was still cool to see. And now, all there was to do was to wait for April 5th. When I first got my hands on the game, I have to say it felt very surreal. For a while, it felt like it would always be delayed. But finally, it was here. I got the deluxe edition of the game, and I remember hearing that it was hard to get a hold of at launch. Good thing I pre ordered it 2 years before it released. Of course, the game is the main attraction here, so let's get to that. If I had a dollar for every logo in the opening sequence of this game, I could buy 24% of a Dr. Pepper candle. And now,
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
what? So, before we play the game, we're shown an intro screen featuring some of Star Wars' most iconic characters: Yoda, Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, but there is one that sticks out. Now, Rey is the main protagonist of the sequel trilogy, so I do think it makes sense she's here. But as for being the front and center of this image, I don't know. If I had to choose one character to represent the entirety of Star Wars, I probably wouldn't choose Rey, although there are people who would. But at the end of the day, it's just the menu. Why don't we look at the game now? Once you enter the game, you'll have no choice but to start with Story Mode. You have the ability to start from any trilogy, although it was initially stated you could start from any episode, so it's weird that they removed that. Story Mode involves two main parts: the traditional levels we've always had, as well as scripted segments that take place within the various worlds. I'm not 100% sure why these exist, because they generally either involve scenes that could have been levels, or scenes that could have been cutscenes. I mean, for example, the opening scene of The Phantom Menace is completely represented by one of these segments, and because of that, you can't replay it unless you start a new save file. But on the other side of that, there are the segments that I never want to play ever again. There will be some times where you're just following a character walking forward, and it's just. Although these areas probably exist because the amount of levels per episode was limited to 5. Speaking of which, a decent amount of levels adapt the same scenes as previous LEGO Star Wars games, but some of them adapt scenes we've never seen before in LEGO form. Of course, episodes 8 and 9 have never been in a LEGO game before, so all levels from those episodes are original. But because the Galaxy Free Play is intended to be the meat of the package, the levels were likely meant to take a backseat here. They're generally shorter than in previous games, and in them they have less collectibles as well. Only 5 mini-kits, and the red brick equivalent was moved elsewhere in the game. The true Jedi meter is still here, although interestingly divided into thirds. We also got a brand new feature with challenges. These can range from killing a certain number of enemies to solving a puzzle in an unexpected way. I specifically remember a level in A New Hope that exemplifies this. In the complete saga, the entire Mos Eisley segment, from Obi-Wan and Luke reaching it to them leaving with Han Solo and Chewbacca, was one single level. This, of course, includes the Battle of the Hangar along with everything else. In this game, though, the part inside the hangar is the only part in this whole level. You spend the entire level just in the hangar, and most of your time will just be spent fending off stormtroopers. On top of this, the fact that interlevel segments aren't replayable means playing story mode again can feel like playing a highlight reel of the episode rather than truly replaying it. Even in free play, these levels can be strange. The story mode cutscenes still play here, and there will be certain moments where it'll just switch you to the story mode characters for a moment. This was all very strange to me, but since the story mode wasn't the priority, I can understand why it's like this, although I don't necessarily agree with it. One of the new additions to the game was the distinct class system. Other LEGO games had similar systems, but this game makes it clear to the player which characters specifically are a part of which class. The Jedi and Sith work as they usually do, but bounty hunters no longer have a bomb and instead can destroy gold objects. Villains are the ones with bombs now, along with being able to use different types of weapons. Both droid classes have been upgraded quite a bit as well. I'm sure if you're a younger sibling who played the complete saga, you remember Discovery on Camino like it was yesterday. While your sibling was running around using the Force and fighting enemies, you were like, "Wow, I can I can open doors." But alas, justice for the younger sibling has finally been served. C-3PO can now officially fight a stormtrooper.
Oh, happy feet. One more combo. That ain't Falco. That ain't Falco.
Also, he can split in half if you want. Oh, there's also heroes, which can wear disguises, use plugs and sockets, and use terminals. Scavengers have pretty cool moveset additions, plus a set of tools they can use, and scoundrels can find weak points and smuggle things. Since this game covered 9 movies, it makes sense that it has the most characters out of any LEGO Star Wars game. But when we look at the character select screen, we can really see how far the developers went here. There are over 300 characters in this game, plus more with DLC. Now, of course, we've got our mainstays, but we've also got characters that only had one line of dialogue, characters that never had any dialogue, characters that were on screen for less than a second, and a character that didn't even appear in the movies and was just an early concept art created before the movie released. That would be like a Mario Kart game having a cow as a playable character. We live in a strange reality. Of course, one of the big trademarks of LEGO games is the custom characters. And looking at the character screen, it doesn't seem like it's here. That's strange. Not a big deal though, because when we unlock the Venator ship, we can go into the medical room and... So, this game doesn't have custom characters. To my knowledge, this is the first time it's been taken out since its introduction in 2006. These back-to tanks being here makes me think custom characters were at one point in development but eventually scrapped. Possibly because of the huge amount of characters, this didn't feel like as much of a loss to me. Either way though, anyone who wanted to roam the galaxy as themselves won't be able to live out their dream. Also, Ben Quaterneros isn't in this game. I think we all know which loss is more impactful. In terms of extras, classic stud multipliers return, with 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, 8 times, and 10 times. Our incredible Super Gonk returns as well, now coated in gold with invincibility and a mustache. Plus, have you ever wondered what would happen if a Gonk Empire took over the galaxy and turned every living being into a Gonk droid? Well, this game's Gonk Civilians extra will let you live out your wildest fever dreams. And that's just scratching the surface of all these gems. I mean, big head mode, comedy weapons, TV mode, and so many more. Other than stud multipliers, Universal Translator is the only other quality of life enhancer extra in this game. It really seems like the developers wanted to prioritize the goofiness of LEGO games that we've always known. And hey, I'm not complaining. Among all of these, there's one extra that's not only completely free, but also pre-purchased so you can enable it as soon as you start the game. That extra is Mumble Mode. To this day, I still don't really understand why they made Mumble Mode an extra instead of a setting, especially since you can enable it from the get-go. But there is something else about Mumble Mode I want to talk about. I mentioned before how I felt a bit skeptical of Mumble Mode when it was first revealed. Seeing how it is in the full game, I think it's safe to say my suspicions were correct. In Mumble Mode, cutscenes are the same as non-Mumble Mode, now with words replaced with incoherent gibberish. The thing is, in early LEGO games, the charm of these cutscenes didn't necessarily come from the fact that they couldn't speak, but rather how they told the story around it. Just comparing the I'm Your Father scene between the Complete Saga and the Skywalker Saga, you can see how the Complete Saga embraces the lack of voice acting with its use of visual humor. But with Mumble Mode in the Skywalker Saga, it just feels like they're speaking a different language to me. Another one of the new features this game brings in is the system to upgrade your abilities. While there is a track for general character upgrades, There's also sections to upgrade abilities for specific classes. This upgrade system is pretty in-depth, allowing for extra health, skip terminals, and collectible detection among many others. Even with all of this, I highly doubt the target demographic of this game used or even understood it. Charm is something that LEGO games have been known for quite a while. Previous games have had visual gags, characters brimming with personality, and anything else that could make you smile. And I'm very glad to say that this charm is also in the Skywalker Saga. Even with dialogue, there were still quite a few cutscenes that made me chuckle. But in terms of the characters themselves, there's so much to appreciate. So many idle animations that really display each character's personality. Just look at Lando Calrissian, for example. He really encapsulates the exaggerated swagger of a Baron administrator. And just look at some of these character interactions.
Maul, you look taller than the last time I saw you.
Because of all of this, it really feels like the developers were huge fans of the movies and really wanted to make a game celebrating the Star Wars franchise. This game's main claim to fame is, of course, the Galaxy Freeplay mode. While this part of the game was generally referred to as the open world, calling it that is debatable in my opinion. It isn't one unified area, instead, a collection of various locations you can travel to, contextualized as being part of the Star Wars galaxy. I was kind of disappointed by this. Whenever I heard people talking about this game being open world before its release, I always assumed that meant each planet would be as large as LEGO Batman 2's Gotham City, but that ended up not being the case. Now that I think about it, that probably would have added years to the development time, but I was still disappointed nonetheless. To me, it seems more like a sample platter of the Star Wars galaxy rather than a true interconnected open world. However, if we look at this game as being more of a Mario Odyssey style 3D platformer where you traverse multiple areas getting collectibles, I think it gives a new perspective on this game. Looking at it that way, this game has tons of content, especially since some planets have multiple locations. This aspect of the game will likely last you a long time, and while it may not be what I anticipated it to be, there's still a lot of fun to be had. But of course, I should probably talk about what you can find in free play. Well, first of all, there's this goober. This guy's mainly another way to check out hints. Pretty much every time you land on a planet, he'll have something to say, which can get a bit irritating after a while. All you have to do to make him stop is read all the hints though. The amount of collectibles in an area mainly depends on their famousness and importance to the movies. After all, the developers didn't want you spending half the game in Utapau. Gold bricks were axed from this game, with the main collectible being replaced with Kyber bricks. I know, very different, but their function did have a bit of a change. You can earn them by getting collectibles in levels, but the majority of them will be found scattered throughout the open world. These can be used to buy upgrades and data cards. If you like extras, that's what data cards are for. Unlike previous games, getting one doesn't unlock a specific extra. Instead, you can get access to any extra with any data card. You still have to buy them with studs though, and there are only 19 data cards in this game, meaning not every area has one. Throughout the worlds, there will also be certain missions available which will let you purchase certain characters and vehicles once you complete them. The space areas of planets don't have as much, but there are still a few things I want to mention. Sometimes you'll find blue comets which will give you 5 kyber bricks once destroyed. There are some missions in space as well, and there can also be space battles you can join. But every once in a while, a capital ship will enter your area. From here, you can destroy its defenses, go through the ship, and fight a boss, usually a ship captain. Once you do all of that, you can purchase the ship, and then go through the ship getting collectibles, kind of like planets. This part feels like an extension of my issues with the rest of the Galaxy Freeplay, simply because it doesn't feel like I'm exploring an entire ship to me. It's especially disappointing since the ships are so expensive. Everything I've talked about up to this point has been in the context of the game working correctly, but if you played this game around its launch, you probably experienced at least one of this game's issues. When you heard me say that, you may be thinking, but the complete saga has a lot of glitches too, and that does make sense. Trust me, I am very aware of the amount of glitches in that game. But a lot of the glitches in the complete saga are wall clips and sequence breaks, things that can be fun to mess around with, especially in speedruns. A lot of the glitches in the Skywalker Saga are the more frustrating types of glitches. One of the most reported ones was in the final level of Revenge of the Sith. If you exited the level while you were playing it, you wouldn't be able to go back to it, meaning you couldn't even finish Episode 3. Thankfully, I never experienced this, although I did experience a few of the other ones. About a month after the game released, a lot of these bugs were patched in an update which also added some new content. Even with that, though, there are some issues that still linger today. As I was recording footage for this video, I got a crash during the final cutscene of the Yoda and Palpatine fight, and I ended up having to replay the whole level again. But that's not to say that this game doesn't have fun glitches either. In Galaxy Freeplay, you're normally restricted to only one computer player, but people discovered pretty quickly that if you're using the Mandalorian, you can gain as many computer players following you as you want. The developers must have decided that attacking kids would be too far, because they can't take damage in any way. Sorry, Anakin. But, if we do attack them repeatedly, we'll be able to go as high in the air as we possibly can. I think there are a few others, but those are the ones I felt were worth mentioning. Okay, so, with all the information I've spewed on you, there seems to be only one question left. Should you play this game if you haven't already? For me, story mode left a lot to be desired, but almost everything else, from Galaxy Freeplay to the mechanics to the humor, are all worth checking out. Sure, having no custom characters can be off-putting, but there are so many characters I didn't feel like I was missing out as much. Of course, this is ultimately up to you. Everything I've said up to this point has been from my point of view, so it's very possible that you may like story mode or dislike Galaxy Freeplay. But whatever you do, I'll be sitting right here, working to afford the rest of that Dr. Pepper candle. Thanks for watching. First off, I'd like to thank Dante for being such a huge fan of my channel. Thank you so much for watching my videos. It really means a lot to have such dedicated fans such as yourself. I'd also like to thank you all for being understanding after taking such a long break. I hope to get back into consistent uploads, although I can't guarantee anything at the moment. Thank you to my sister as well for helping me with the script, even if she was the older sibling who got to play as Obi-Wan.